You're taking all your decisions, right? You're deciding for yourself what to do, what not to do, where to stop and where to go. And that transition is never an easy transition to begin with. So the very reason that you think, you want to start off on your own, because, you can have your time in your control, can turn out to be actually completely, diametrically opposite.
So imagine the amount of sacrifice by the averagers and multiplied by the number of people in the workforce. And each one of them may have wanted to be a chef or be a barber like Rohan or something. I don't know. But somebody didn't want to be doing what he was doing. He didn't want to be an data analytics guy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 15 of the Second Innings podcast series. Purpose, passion, joy are becoming more important to all of us in our life journeys, especially in our work. Many of us are doing this through rediscovering ourselves by changing tracks in our lives to a second innings. Our Second Innings podcast is where we explore through conversations how some people have done these transitions. We uncover their stories, their experiences, and most importantly, their learnings. Transitioning to a second innings may require taking risks and stepping outside of societal norms and our comfort zone. Telling and listening to such stories helps all of us. The first person I'd like to introduce is Vikram Arya. Vikram was born in the city of Tehzeeb, Mehfil, and Kebabs, Lucknow. He was brought up in the mountains of Nainital, so really had the best of both worlds. He has worked in advertising and marketing for over 20 years, in advertising in Leo Burnett, Shell, and in marketing in Spice Mobile and in Pernod Ricard. He is a father of two brats. He called them brats, not me. And he likes to be called the mountain man. He is deeply concerned about the mountains and involved in a lot of causes in aid of Nainital and its fragile ecosystems. He is now a developer in the mountains, and he ensures each project has lesser and lesser environmental impact as he learns along and makes cottages for people with a bit of hill in them. Welcome to the show, Vikram. Thank you for being here. The second person we have is Pooja Gupta. Pooja has worked across 20 years as well with MNCs such as Asian Paints and Akzo Nobel in marketing leadership roles across India and Southeast Asia. And over the last 10 years has been working in education with various edtech companies. And she is now a co-founder at Tinker Village. Pooja is an economics graduate and an MBA from NMIMS, Mumbai. She is a mom to two boys and the inspiration behind what Pooja is building at Tinker Village. Some of the other things she's deeply passionate about are wellness through Ayurveda and yoga, dancing. She's a trained Indian classical dancer, something we've learned about her today. Reading to her kids at bedtime, whatever their age might be. Learning by doing and tinkering. And she is a tinkerer who loves to get her own hands dirty and building. Thank you very much, Pooja, for being here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation between all four of us.
Thank you, Atul and Suman, for having me here.
All right, so let's start with our customary what we like to call our origin story for each of you. So I'm going to ask Pooja you first to jump in and talk about yourself from your early years, your upbringing when you were a kid, and when you went to college, and all of that origin story which has made you who you are today.
Perfect. So I'll start off with literally, what my upbringing has been, because that plays a very large role in terms of what I have chosen to do at different phases of my life and where I am currently. I belong to the Indian Railways family. My father was with the Indian Railways. And therefore, by default, we were always moving places every 2 years. So it was a given thing that my brother and I had to make friends very quickly, adapt to new places, to new people, and be comfortable with the thought, much against the rest of my kin and family back in Delhi, who always had a very, same kind of a stable upbringing as I thought at that point of time. Undoubtedly, I think this has been one of the biggest influencers in our life. Being watching my dad do what he did has also played a very significant role. So my father was the first man ever in the Indian Railways. I mean, he's a natural tinkerer himself, and I think I learned a lot watching him do his work. He was the first man in the Indian Railways who ever tinkered and experimented with putting on the wheels of a train he transferred the wheels of a train onto a jeep. And the reason he did that is because, in those days, they used to have an inspection trolley. So as a chief engineer of his department, his regular work meant inspecting the tracks to see if there are any, defects. And it was a very manual, laborious process. There were two men involved in pushing the trolley so that he could inspect. He always felt this was something which was a horrid way to run a trolley. It was running from the British times. So he decided to turn from a manual to a automated mechanic process. And he experimented by transferring the wheels of a railway train onto the jeep. And bingo, I mean, it worked like magic. Next thing is we as kids could accompany him on his inspection surveys because now we were all in the jeep, you know. So I think these kind of observations, experiences growing up taught me one thing, that if you really get good at something, if you learn something, you can create magic. And for me, he was this true blue civil engineer who really loved his craft, who really loved what he studied. And he didn't go to a fancy engineering college. He went to a very regular, simple civil engineering college, and yeah, I mean, got selected to railways, and then he went on to doing what he did. So yeah, so we moved places. That was my upbringing across. Now, of course, I'm a wife to an amazing human being, a mom to two even more amazing human beings. Uh, they get most of it from me, of course. Yeah, and both of them extremely very hands-on, kinesthetic learners. And I think that's the reason and the inspiration behind the work that I do currently, because I see how my kids learn. They are not the typical traditional textbook learners, and especially my older one, and in being inspired from his ways of learning is what got me to start what I have.
Us a little bit about the corporate journey piece as well. What was the kind of work you were doing, and what you kind of learned in that period of time as well.
Sure. So, started my career with a campus placement at Asian Paints. I think once again it was a divine hand that I was extremely fortunate to be at A Paints at a time when the entire company was going through a transition from being uh, a very contractor painter driven company to being a very consumer driven company. And the mandate to me from my GM on day one was Pooja, the Gattu. So Gattu used to be this iconic brand of Asian paints, which was designed by R.K. Lakshman. And the first day he told me is, you know what, we are dropping Gattu. And my reaction was, wow, really? That's a bold step. And he said, we are moving to being a very decor friendly brand, which a consumer can relate to. And how can we go about doing that? So I think my journey at Apain started with literally setting the foundation for a decor color kind of a color marketing portfolio. And from there on, I think and yeah, I think one of the earliest things I did is, and I think more being inspired by the way my dad works, I told my GM, so if you want me to create some magic, you have to trust in the process. Yeah, trust the process I'm going to follow, and which means I'll not be seen at office. So if you're the kind who's going to insist on the swipe in swipe out kind of a thing every day, I'll not be able to do anything. So I was literally the one who was absent in office. I found my office in a dilapidated chamri of Asian Paints. I said, look, I'm going to be found here. I'm going to get my hands dirty every day in cans of paint, and I just need one person from R&D. The two of us are just going to paint the walls. So when my fellow brand managers visited, they said, wow, I mean, this is where we want to be. So thanks to the freedom I got from them, we managed to do some amazing work, created a whole decor portfolio, and 20 years down the line, I see A-Paint still carrying it very strongly. We started the first ever color forecasting, a color trend platform at A-Paints, and that kind of became an industry benchmark in India. So that was life at A-Paints. We as a family moved then to Singapore, and I joined another brand, which is Akzo Nobel. Went on to do another set of work with Akzo Nobel for a different market. From there on, I jumped to starting my first venture. And that venture was in the space of wellness. Now, that was directly linked to the fact that that time I was expecting my first one, my older one. And I was deep into researching on Ayurveda and wellness because I wanted to be a complete, a parent who brings up a child in a very natural way. That got me heavily interested in yoga, Ayurveda. And that naturally led to my very first venture, which was Herb Tree. And we became the first distributor partners for Patanjali Ayurveda in Southeast Asia. I had no prior experience in distribution, warehousing, logistics, none of that. And then we started our venture in education, our first venture, which was Imaginators. Life got us back to India, and here is where we are.
That's indeed an amazing story, Pooja. You've, starting from the way your dad was a tinkerer, it looks like you've always been a tinkerer, the way you tinkered around with paint.
True.
But what I didn't know is you're also one of the pioneers of hybrid way of working, since even way back then you told your boss that you're not coming to office. So I thought
Yes.
that was interesting.
I had some pretty good bosses also.
So, Vikram, let's dive into your story and how you've come to where you are today.
Atul, I got to thank you and Suman first. I mean, that itself requires a dedication. This should be part of your templates of future. Where, and I was mentioning to you yesterday also that these conversations that you're putting out and these conversations that you're having with people, with entrepreneurs, people in the second innings, maybe even the third, but just the fact that they're getting to talk about it, to talk about the journey, their past, even visions of the future, that itself is very, very helpful. It goes a long way for somebody to say that, I have done this, I started something. Everybody goes through phases of difficulty and challenges. But when you get to talk about it, it's a recollection of all the milestones you cross, and you are creating the opportunity to make that possible. And then somewhere it makes you feel, okay, maybe some part of it I did right. So thanks to you guys. I think it's a lovely platform, and best of luck to you.
We appreciate your kind words.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting, all the guests have their stories are so diverse. It's always nice to talk to different
Yeah.
people to get their
And that's what
perspectives.
had me exciting to come on to this chat and be ready and not lazy like other days. So thanks again. Like Atul was like his like brief snippet. I am from the mountains, and I keep saying it. It's as if that is my tag. That's the tag I want to own, not the education, not where I've worked, not what I've done in life. It's somewhere that's something that was probably one of the first seeds of fascination and infatuation that was there, and it's continued to date. So everywhere I would, and over a period of time, we went back to it, and I now work there. And it has given us a lot. It has given me a lot of direction also in life. We're from a small family. I was born in Lucknow. Little bit of tehzeeb, a whole lot of lazeez khana, and then I, at a very early age, I was put into boarding school in the hills. My sister and I, and so I had the best of both worlds, like I'd like to put it, that I had the maybe not the tehzeeb, but the lazeez khane ki chahat, and the peace and quiet and the beauty, um, or the simplicity of the mountain. That is something that always stayed with me, and I think I try and imbibe and live by it. So my earlier years, we traveled a lot. My father, like Pooja's father, was a civil engineer with a UP Housing and Development Board. So we moved a lot within Uttar Pradesh. Um, he he came in from a very difficult background, a very challenging background. Didn't have means. The proverbial story of our parents walking across hills to reach their school. He did walk some 14, 15 kilometers. Um, and in a very young age, he was sent across to his chacha's house to study because there was no schooling infrastructure there. And thereon he kept at it. I have an equally strong mother figure. She got married at the age of 16. Yet she, amongst the four of us, She is probably the most ambitious person I know. Even after we'd finished college, in my early years of work, I remember her calling me and saying, I want to study animation. And she did a 3D animation course. She didn't know what computers were, but I remember in 85, in 86, I was put into Uptech, which is an earlier Apple Macintosh collaboration with the UP Technology or India Technology. So she didn't know what it was, but she knew something good. So these are the two people I drew inspiration from. I got into college. I got into SRCC in Delhi, and and then I was untethered. 10 years out of boarding school, suddenly you were in a big city with all your friends and a little bit of pocket money, which would finish in the first 5 days. And in the first year, I didn't make the marks. I flunked, and I was sent back to Nainital. I think I should have learned, but what it did was I was back in the mountains and I had more fun. There were a lot of walks. There were a lot of going out in nature, swimming in the rivers, exploring a whole lot of places, spending a lot of time in the jungles. I loved reading, but I didn't like the stipulated manner in which it was governed. So from there on, I came back and I came back to Delhi. I did my MBA, and thanks to concerned friends and ambitious friends who I would hang around with, I wasn't very concerned about my future. I should have been, because after all the efforts of my parents, it was now time for the fruit to bear or the tree to bear fruit. But I was in a different need and a mode. But hanging around with those friends, I too started looking for a job. And while there were campus placements happening, there was a friend of mine who would he was working at a place which I really wanted to know more about. And he would be getting the International GQ, the Rolling Stones magazines home. And I would say, where do you get this from? He'd say, from work. And then I got very intrigued. I said, what kind of work is this? And then he got me an introduction into his advertising agency. So that was my first thing into work, first introduction to work. I was never, like I said, I was never very ambitious, but I was passionate and hardworking. And there was this thing about ideas and creativity and communication and brand discovery. So I did around 6 years of advertising. I was part of some very good campaigns, worked with some great people. It led me on the path of finding out the depth of business of marketing. So I realized that I may not be very quick off the saddle in terms of understanding something very quickly. I take my time. So I didn't move to many agencies where attrition is very high. And then it led me to want to learn more, and that's when I joined telecom. I was working on Samsung mobiles, and the entire team shifted and started a new Indian handset brand. Very exciting times, challenging times, international brands, and then there are these Indian brands. So I joined that. So the journey was good, the learnings were great, uh, but the mountains remained. I would keep going up on weekends, participate in some nature cleaning drive, or it would just be a bunk and go fishing with the friends, whatever. Because these are some things I um, didn't want to miss. After telecom, I joined liquor, and liquor marketing was also very fascinating. These are all things just flowing into each other, but I got into the depth of it. I loved the stories behind all of the liquor brands, and on the parallel timeline, the mountains continued. And that's when I decided that maybe something needs to be done. So I thought there's something much more, and I realized that there is a lot. People who started knowing me in office as the mountain man. Where can we go? We want to buy a piece of land. They would say they had this dream of wanting to make something in the hills. So I think that gave me my direction, and that's when I got into development and construction in the hills.
Wow. It was just fun listening to that, Vikram, even though you told us a lot about that yesterday. But even hearing it a second time was very interesting. You obviously had quite an exciting journey, and I love the way um, the mountain story is intertwined with your life, right? When did this idea of venturing out on your own really take seed? How long back was it? And from that point, how long do you think it took you to say that I'm going to do that. And let's maybe go with Pooja first.
Okay. So I'll start off with my very first brush with entrepreneurship and what got me there. So I think that was around the time when I had delivered my older one, and I was very clear about one thing, that I'm going to take a break from the rigmarole of the corporate world and give as much time to my child as possible. So I wanted to be around him completely, and I was clear that I'm not stepping into the regular role of the corporate. And having done that, at the same time, I was getting deeper and deeper with my research and with my daily application of yoga and Ayurveda. And, many times in life, you don't go looking for starting up, or you don't go looking for starting a venture, with that kind of a mandate in mind. It depends a lot upon the people you meet along in the journey, what comes by. And sometimes you don't even think, you just say a yes to an opportunity and you kind of take it off from there. And that was precisely what happened with my first venture, which was Herb Tree. We had gone down for a holiday back home. We visited Haridwar, and one of those trips, we met with the founders of Patanjali. And I mean, just across the table, they said, why don't you come and lead my food and herbal park in Haridwar? And he laid out the ambition, he laid out the plan. It's just that, we are not moving back to India yet, but if there's still something I can do, I would love to. He said, okay, why don't you just, open up the markets? Why don't you take us to Singapore and Southeast Asia? And I said, okay, yes, why not? Something made me sad when I came out of the room. I told myself, what was I just thinking there? I have no experience with imports, with warehousing, logistics, distribution. I mean, I've been a complete marketer, sales and marketing person. And I said, okay, fine. Now that I've said yes, I've got to do something about it. And that's literally what started my journey with Patanjali. From there on, of course, everything and anything that could go wrong, went wrong. I mean, to begin with, our biggest bottleneck and debacle that came was, the shipment was ready I mean, literally, it was ready to set sail from India. We were ready to receive in Singapore. We had lined up our distributors, and just then we got to know from the Singapore authorities that the entire product range has been rejected. And my partner and I were like, I mean, really, is that happening? I mean, the ship is ready to set sail, we are set to receive, and how can it be rejected? And next thing we come to know is that the packaging does not follow the international norms of imports, and the entire packaging has to be changed. Otherwise, we cannot import it. I mean, for us, this literally meant going back in time. We had our capital invested, it going back and changing everything from scratch. Uh, but yeah, I mean, that kind of made you realize that be prepared for anything. We had no choice. We had to stop everything that we were doing. We went back to the drawing board with the media team of Patanjali. We sat and we reworked each and every single packaging for the 90 odd products that we were bringing into Singapore. And some of the simplest changes were, something as basic as that the listing of the ingredients has to be in descending order. So yeah, so pretty early on, I understood that, life in your own space, in your own venture, will never pan out the way you've decided it to be. The plans will not necessarily materialize. You need to have your backups in place.
That is so true. Vikram, at your end, when do you think you kind of realized that you wanted to do something on your own and be a master of your own future?
So while my parents had worked very hard, it wasn't like we had a very. I feel we didn't have a very aware system. It was always that you must go out and do something. You must achieve. Uh, there wasn't, like I was saying, there wasn't too much information, is what I would say. It was coming in from friends, etc. And somehow I was as if I was copying it off them. That, okay, you're going to do this, I will do this, etc. So I was always flowing into things. It was good that I liked my stints there. But somewhere I always looked back that, the things that I really want to do or we really want to do in life, like those those things would keep coming on the be always on the back of my mind. That this is actually what I really want to do. This is where I actually wanted to be. And it's not about, we're not talking about uh, to work or to be somewhere, you must make sacrifices. So it wasn't like I wasn't aware of that and we were not following that. But I just didn't like the way it was going. And slowly, what it started building, these little things started becoming a little bigger and they started becoming a stronger foundation. I realized I was having conversations of logic initiated by me with my colleagues and team, saying that, listen, if I had if I had an interest in something and if I wanted to be a cook, then why am I not a cook? You did a job. Our parents or that generation's conditioning was a government job. You got to land one, and then our time was to land a job in an international organization because that was elements of prestige, etc. All around it was job, and then you were putting in your hard work and passion into that mold you've been put into. Not that I love or I'm driven about this and this will be a career. So I had two instances or two things that would constantly grind in my head. There was this Sir Walter Scott's poem, Patriotism. I apologize to him for altering it a little bit. But his poem was something like, lies there a man uh, with soul so dead who to himself had never said, this is your native land. And to spoil it a little bit, lies there a man with a soul or a brain so dead that even if you had half an idea, or even if you have half the brain, at least try it out, at least pursue it, see something might come of it, because it is your own, instead of working just because you need to keep working and need to increase the salary. So that risk of trying was not there. And one thing would really egg me on. I never chose the right idols in my life or the right moments to be idols. So there's this film, I forget the name, Robin Williams, funny character, etc. So he's definitely not the icon you're looking for as a career, to say. And he's sitting on a porch and he's having a cigarette. Okay. And he's saying that, I wish I had tried this. I wish I had done that. Because he's sitting on a creaky old porch and reminiscing and regretting that, I wish I had done this too. So I was thinking that, at the age of 60, I don't want to be bent over, sitting somewhere and thinking, man, that idea came and I should have tried. Kya pata kya hota? So these things were what was really poking me and egging me and all. But what kept me within that box was because, a way of expressing it is, some of us are not the most ambitious, not the most calculative. We're not investment bankers sharp to spot a trend or say, this is what is coming up next and this is where I want to be. Some of us are averagers, not avengers. So, and we're happy with that. Aapki rat race, aapko Mubarak. I wanted to wander. I wanted to do this. So that's why but I didn't have the courage. And so I was working in my previous organization, and probably the 10th year, I was putting in a lot, and yet at the back of mind, the mountains were running. And suddenly it was appraisal time. COVID was going on. All of us had these incidents of before and after COVID, BCE, ADE, and stuff. And we sat down for the appraisal, and in a snap, I was asked to leave. The appraisal, because we used to do it on Teams, every call gets clocked and timed. I remember the time on the thing, it was just 5 minutes into the appraisal call, and I was asked that we're gonna have to let you go. So this has happened to me earlier. Even then, when I got was asked to leave, I went on nice treks to the Sundar place here, and I drove around a lot and everything. Met a lot of interesting people who were a couple from MIT, sitting in a place called Beri Nag. 9 hours, where we city folk complain about bahut dur hai. 9 hours in the hills. They were out of fine needles. This is 2012. They were generating electricity and supplying to village by village. So MIT, 9 to 10 kilometers hours from a city, making electricity for villagers. Nothing adds up. That is no logic. But there are people like that. So somewhere that I think those are things that stayed with me, uh, and I also realized that using a little bit of marketing mind, I realized that there is too much stress in the city. We always are imagining ourselves to be somewhere, and so many of our friends coming up and saying, "Listen, we want this small patch of land. We'll do a little bit of farming, do murgi, and we'll be happy in retirement." I said, "Damn good, man." So that became the business idea for me. And then I would ask them, "But why not now? Why not do it now? Why can't you think of something and do it now?" So that's when I'd already been asked to walk the plank, which made for a perfect platform to start my own thing. During a national conference, I had just about had enough. There were constantly these self-made jargons of corporate fallacy and all of these things in my mind. You are not married. You are married to the organization. The organization is not married to you. All of this was in my mind, and that brain half dead or whatever. Follow your passion. So there was this. We were at a national conference, and there was a presentation to be made, and the nth change had come in at the last minute, and I had to rush up to my room so as not to disturb the conference and download the final presentation and AV, which we've all done. And it was going to take 10 to 15 minutes, and I just about had enough. Within 10-15 minutes, believe you me, I started a page on Facebook as my so thought of then side hustle. It was called The Lost on Purpose. I knew it would elicit a lot of a lot of jokes and fun, but it was meant to be in that phase that I'm not going to go according to the regular kind of names or whatever. Lost on Purpose. Yes, we're going to have fun. We want to wander, and there is business in that. So there's stress in the city. I wanted to wander, and the hills became the perfect getaway for work and business. So that is the reason why I shifted, and that's where I shifted.
Wow, that is indeed a fascinating story. Yeah, and so many places, the dots kept connecting. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the transition. What I call the hot state and the cold state, right? So cold state is when you're planning to make a change, all of that, you do your planning, uh, very logical, very cognitive. But when you actually take the jump, that's the difficult part. There's a lot running through you. It's the hot state, life gets in the way. So let me come to you, Pooja, first. You said earlier that you were very clear that you wanted to take a break, right, after your first one was born. So did that make the transition easier? Talk a little bit about what kind of emotions was going through you when you actually came away from the corporate world.
Yeah, so someone like I was mentioning, I was clear about one thing, that I'm not going to be part of the corporate rat race or the corporate world as I'm raising my first child. And the first 5 years, I was very sure I'm just going to be around him. And whatever inspirations I find being in that space, and as a first time mom, whatever comes my way. So I wasn't shutting myself to exploring an opportunity, but whatever comes my way naturally and fits in within the new space that I was now a part of is something that I'm going to embrace. Looking back now, and given that I have been part of 3 different ventures, I feel that the very first time you start up, it may not necessarily be the most planned, or it's not something that you've kind of completely thought through. You an opportunity comes your way, you're passionate about it, and you just want to go all out and attend to it or do something about it, right? Ayurveda for me was something like, the more I researched, the more I studied. I mean, I was extremely deeply fascinated. As a avid yoga practitioner, I felt that healing is something, healing through yoga, healing through Ayurveda. Why can't I just kind of take this message across to a larger audience? To answer your question, the transition from a very structured kind of do's and don'ts in a corporate world, where you have somebody telling you and you're kind of looking up to somebody to guide you whether you're on the right path or wrong path, changes completely. You're taking all your decisions, right? You're deciding for yourself what to do, what not to do, where to stop and where to go. And that transition is never an easy transition to begin with. So the very reason that you think you want to start off on your own, because you can have your time in your control, can turn out to be actually completely diametrically opposite, because you almost end up giving it your all. And in the early days, in your initial very first startups, you don't even know where and how to draw the line.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's not at all easy, and that's why that I was asking you that question. So, what did it personally feel like for you? Suddenly the structure is not there. Suddenly the paycheck is not there at the
Right.
end of the month. While you have all the freedom, but you're also figuring out what to do, right?
True.
So, any incidences or any stories that you'd like to share?
So I think in particular, I mean, I can actually now kind of, piece it together through all the different ventures that I have been part of. I think one thing I've realized is that what starts off with passion, yeah, the passion fades out. I mean, the passion stays on, but a passion is something which takes a back step, and then finally it's the purpose that you begin to see. And even if it's impacting one person positively, or you hear that from even one person, that wow, this has made such a difference to the way I've been living or the way I've been thinking, that is something which truly becomes your motivation to go on. Because no 2 days are alike, no 2 days are going to look and feel similar. And
Yeah.
once you run out of the steam on passion, or you, like I said, you may not run out of passion, but passion alone can't be the fuel. Yeah. And when purpose kicks in, it's something which sees you through. And that's exactly what I have been seeing and witnessing through all our different startups. The very first one with Herb Tree, when we had people come in and tell me, and in fact, non-Indians, some of them Chinese, who said, I have been suffering from arthritis for such a long time, and I have tried every possible Western medication and it never worked. And now, with the complete package on yoga as well as the Ayurveda medication, it's worked like a miracle for me. So when you have people come in and say that, you kind of start wondering that, oh my God, I didn't even kind of start up thinking this is the kind of impact it's going to have. Yeah.
And
And
that kind of becomes your purpose, right?
that
Because those
is
are
the
so
purpose.
impactful. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's the purpose that sees you through.
Mm.
And this has been my single biggest learning through all of the different ventures that I've been in, and even with our current one, that while all the passion and zeal is there, and that's literally the wind beneath your wings, but finally the fuel that gets you through is the purpose that you see and the impact that you're making, even if it's in the life of one person. uh, that's a strong enough motivation to see you through.
It's interesting you're talking of these two things very distinctly, very different, whereas often we tend to interchangeably use these words, passion and purpose. And from the way you described it, it sounds like passion is something that you want to do, whereas purpose is really comes from seeing the difference, the impact that you make out there, right? Which is more outcome based. Would that
Perfect.
be a fair summary of the difference? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a perfectly correct summary. And purpose is almost like
Okay.
an external validation. It's the impact.
Can I throw in something else into that discussion? Can I just throw in something else to that discussion? Because I was also very fascinated with Pooja making a very interesting distinction between passion and purpose. And Suman, you're absolutely right. We use them quite interchangeably. Is the passion really a passion if it fades away? Maybe it was just a fleeting, strong desire rather than a passion. So a passion is something which is so close to your purpose that it will last. But we use passion very broadly. But passion, when it's really fulfilling a purpose, is actually a real passion. Example, I have a passion for watching football. Now, that's not a passion. It's just something I love doing. right? So I'm just wondering
Right.
whether passion in the context of what we're using it for is actually very strongly joined to purpose. I mean, these are all semantics, but I thought that was an interesting distinction you were making between passion and purpose.
Perfect. So I think, Atul, you nailed it. We use the word passion, yes, in many forms and sometimes very loosely, but at the crux of it, if your passion has literally passed the baton to your purpose, it was definitely a passion. If it was something, it could have been just a love for something or an
Yeah.
idea
Yeah.
that came across that doesn't really find a construct in passion. So a passion is something you're almost looking at from the angle of where my passion can positively impact somebody. When you see that it crosses that bridge, is where you feel that was always my passion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I think that clarity was good. So one, I'm taking away that one is more about the outcome. That's more like meaning, right? Whereas passion is something that you just enjoy.
Right.
Super. Vikram, let me come to you with the hot state, right? So when you quit, somehow, you were, and in fact, the other day we were talking, you made a very interesting point. You said, I was kind of signing out of the corporate world, right? And there were so many dots that were connecting. But when you actually stepped out, how was it like? What was going through you?
It was like a ton of bricks, Suddenly you sit in an interview and then you leave, and then you do not know where the next paycheck is going to come, because I think we never prepared so well for. None of us are doomsday planners in that sense. Doomsday preppers like how they are. So we were planning for the future. I had, although this love for the mountains was there and I want to be there. Like I said, I didn't have the courage to do it on my own. So we had invested some money in the construction of a property in the hills as a resort, but that would be for later, you know. But luckily, I'd done that. It wasn't something for the now. So here I was with this. While I was okay with the situation, but the impact of it was, kids going to a good school in Gurgaon, the expenses, the EMIs, all those things that we are lovingly burdened with. So we had that, and so that made for a very hot state, and I didn't have a plan as such. But that page that had created then in a fleeting moment had also this one thing that, since 2008 I wanted to make a structure. I wasn't an architect. I was no developer. Nothing, not even close to it. Uh, it was there brewing in my head since 2008, somewhere really in the back of my head. And then I started posting about it on the page, and I started posting about the pieces of land or the views that I would see when I would go there. And I would say, imagine having something like this. That got the attention of some people. That got conversations going. I ended up chatting with somebody who called me out of the blue after a non-marketed, non-promoted Facebook page, and he says, "What are you making? And what is this?" And he sent me a sketch. I want some modifications. It was a very bad sketch by his own admittance of the cottage that he wanted to be made. And he wrote, "Humse na ho paega. Let's do this. You haven't done it. I haven't done it." So by the end of October, 1 month before my last paycheck would come, I had the promise of one cottage. But suddenly, from these meetings and team meetings and the very irritating Microsoft Teams ringtone, I was rid of all that like I always wanted to do. And next moment, I was doing job lists and procurement lists with the mystery, uh, 12 का सरिया, labor, कब आ रहा है? And I was doing that, standing out of the open, just a mountain, nothing on the land. And the client is calling me and saying, when are we going to start construction? So it was a completely different situation. I should have been in panic, but maybe I'm thick skinned. I was not. Maybe I had some confidence myself. I had no money. It was very difficult, but I was like it.
Here's a very interesting case. We often talk about metaphorically standing on the edge and wanting to take that leap or the jump, but sometimes you're just pushed out, right? And that also reminds me
Yes.
of a very interesting study they'd done on happiness where they asked people what's the best things that happened with you. And they also asked what is the worst thing that's happened to you. And very interestingly, a lot of them spoke of the same thing for both. They say, the best thing that happened with me was that I lost my job. 10 years on, they said that was the best thing that happened. I mean, that was the worst thing, but the best thing was that I had lost my job. The worst thing that happened was I got divorced. 10 years later, they said that's the best thing that happened to me. Isn't it? So
I
sometimes the
feel
push is from outside, but that helps you to rediscover
that is
yourself,
what is
isn't it?
needed.
Let's talk a little bit about the average thing that you talked about. I found that quite interesting. It resonates with me because I always think that I was one of those average guys. I was not a real high flying performer. Uh, you also said that most of us want to do something, but we don't have the courage, right? Uh, so, and in fact, somebody was saying that, once you're out of a job, some people do consulting and all that, but you can only do that if you've left at a certain level, isn't it? Maybe you're a CXO, or that people want to listen to you, and you can consult people. But if you're an average, then what do you do? I can talk about my experience. So I was also kind of signing off. This was about 10 years back. Got into something which I was very passionate about. I found my purpose, to your point, Pooja, only when I realized that it was making an impact. But that took a while, to start making that impact. So yeah, I can completely relate to that. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
So my analogy a little earlier to that of we are the averages, not the avengers, and there's a whole mass of us. And I think we always putting people on a pedestal. He's a doctor, they wear capes. He's a soldier, they wear capes. But the we who's putting them on a pedestal, उनके बारे में कब कौन बात करेगा? The people who are putting you on a pedestal, when will they get recognized? So you living in the gray, in an office, even with a close 5 people conversation, suddenly one guy props up and says, I play the guitar, or I teach at an NGO after works, and you're like, yo man, you are the most interesting guy I know. Because everybody's life is so great because all they do, or it's not that they don't want to do, 4 weekends in a year of driving or scuba diving or something doesn't make you something that who says, Ki, bhai, this is the passion that I follow. It's the rare opportunity. So I realized I was losing out a lot of time in the things that I wanted to do, spend time with family, whatever. And if I ever were to say it in an office setting that I want to spend time with family, I want to be in a rock concert, I don't want to come to work tomorrow because I want to go for a walk. You'd be the joke of the entire office, and imagine the impact on your appraisal. The system doesn't forget. And I didn't like the system. So that's what to me was that this can't be it. And even if I have half an idea and I may not be the smartest one in the thing, uh, I'm going to try for it. And that's what was that was always going. So I started putting some steps in place. But to your question, that is where the averager sometimes misses out on an entire timeline in life of having taken that chance. And that is why sometimes the most cherished moment is that I got a chance to do it. Luckily I got to do it. And it's not that it's you will always see stories of success. I'd like to rather point out the odds, because this is not just a conversation, it's also venting. I was waiting to be heard like many other people. But I also and we do this, you lay bare so that people say, हाँ यार ये कुछ कह रहा है. And that happened with me also, because in a job, you stayed within a job to pay the EMIs and school fees and expenses, because although you didn't want to be there. So imagine the amount of sacrifice by the averagers and multiplied by the number of people in the workforce. And each one of them may have wanted to be a chef, or be a barber like the Zohan or something. I don't know. But somebody didn't want to be doing what he was doing. He didn't want to be an data analytics guy.
Yeah, so in a way, it's like finding your passion. I think a lot of guests have told us this, that finally, while there's been a lot of diversity in their opinions, but one thing which is common is they say finally you have to enjoy what you're doing, because that keeps you going. That's the fuel, right?
And that's where bending on Vikram, what you were saying was about success. Two things that come to my mind straight away on that is, number one, who defines success, right? Yes, of course, there is a generally accepted version of success which is often related to money or it's related to levels in an organization, CEOs, etc., etc. But if you define success for your individual self, then the definition is totally different. Number one. Number two, what you said about the averagers, and you and I were talking about this yesterday as well, that it's very easy because of media that there's the magazine cover effect, right? Everyone thinks that the person, you have to be that one person
Yes.
who's on magazine cover, but that's not necessary. I mean, you decide to make this transition, you don't have to be supremely successful. You could be above average successful and still be very successful, and most importantly, success as defined by yourself. So that aspect is something that is a very crucial part of this transition into a second innings that all of us kind of are aspiring to at some level.
So let's talk a bit about the learnings that you've had and also the unlearnings, that some of us come with certain beliefs systems from the corporate world. So maybe I'll come to you, Pooja. Talk to us a bit about the learnings that's happened in this journey of yours.
Right, sure. So I think, Suman, I'll take it on from the point where we left around success, and I think that's almost something that deserves enough of a conversation, and I can go on all day talking about success, because I think one of the biggest changes that begins to happen in your second innings is your very definition of success, and your success is for you to define. So I think from from in your early days or in your initial path in your career, success is a completely and externally validated statement. How the world looks at you, you're constantly doing an outward in kind of a analysis of your own self, of success, your titles, your run up the ladder, your promotions is what defines success for you. How the world looks at you, how the world talks about you behind your back becomes your lessons, your way of looking at success. I think in your second innings, all of that changes dramatically, and your success is for you to define. And I think I'll especially talk even more so from a woman founder kind of a perspective, where literally I think success to you at the end of the day, I ask myself, the biggest factors of success is, have I been healthy today? Did I breathe well? Did I get a good home cooked meal today? Do I have the luxury of having my kids around me? And more so, are my parents near to me? Are my in-laws near me? Because by this age, your kids are growing up, your parents are aging, your in-laws are aging. Both sides need your support. So your success is not just about your individual success. What's the kind of support system am I building for my parents, for my in-laws, for my kids? And it starts to have a much bigger meaning. Yeah. And I think this changes something dramatically in your second
Yeah.
innings. Of course, I mean, you
Yeah.
need to have all of your basics of, can I pay my bills? Can I pay my
Yeah, sure.
child's school fee? And is all of that getting covered? But the way you look at success just changes dramatically. It is such a, inward feeling and an inward definition, and that keeps you happy. And I think seeking that, I mean it's almost every day I ask myself, what is happiness for me?
Pooja, do you think it's different for women
I-
and men?
Atul, I would call that out very very honestly, and I would say it definitely is different, and there is just no hiding that fact, or no pushing that under the carpet, because at the end of the day, if my child has an exam tomorrow, I do need to be back home at a certain time and next to him. Or if I'm traveling, I know I have to have a Zoom call with him unless there is a tutor for him. I know I have to be next to him. Or if the child is not well, he is looking out for me more than, even if you have the world's most caring dad, who's kind of completely there to manage, but the child is looking out for the mother. Aging parents, aging in-laws, there is an implicit kind of an expectation that I would be around when they need.
Yeah.
without a doubt. For me, I'm almost navigating my day around that. Yeah, I mean, I cannot just kind of take a decision which is about, okay, fine, let me keep that aside and let me look at this in silo. So my life cannot work in a silo, whether I'm a founder or whether I'm in a corporate. uh, that continues to define and determine how I define each day, how I structure my day, and more importantly, how I structure my career.
Yeah.
And to your point, Atul, also in terms of the choices of venture or choices of entrepreneurship, I think that a woman ends up choosing more so are around the spaces that she is immediately connected to in her personal space.
Interesting.
This has exactly been the journey I've experienced. So when I was a mother to a young child and just born, I was deeply into wellness and Ayurveda. As my kids grew older and I see them learning the way they are, and I'm getting deeply more and more interested in methods of learning and how I can make them love to learn, how can I make them find joy in their learning, was the natural calling and the natural reason for me to jump into the space of building Tinker Village. And
So I fully agree with you on that, and that it is very different. Yet at the same time, some of the things that you talked about initially about success is even simple things like, do I get to eat a home cooked meal? Am I healthy today? I think those are a lot to do with gratitude, and which really is not really gender specific,
true.
isn't it?
Just getting to breathe good, clean air, I mean, Atul, sorry, but literally, like, you wake up seeing a bright, clean sun, clear sunshine, clear skies, clean blue skies. And you just feel that where you are in time and place is itself the biggest blessing.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting. I think the personally, for instance, I struggle with the gratitude thing. I know it's very important, but you tend to take things for granted. It's very
True.
seldom I'm feeling that I'm grateful that I'm healthy today, right? I think that's a skill that needs to be developed. Vikram, let me come to you. Is there any learnings or unlearnings that you would like to talk about in this
A
journey?
lot of what Pooja says resonates with me. Obviously, I don't face the challenges which definitely need to be called out for being a woman. So I can't imagine suddenly being in the hills and trying to start a construction business. Being a woman, I can actually practicalize it, visualize it. But yeah, you know, the entire thing was that if there was ever, if I look at it, this was always a driver, doing the things that you want to do. And I mentioned earlier also, spending time with family was also parents. Even then, they're the loneliest. Typically, many people who are from small towns like us have traveled from the city. The parents continue to be there. You are now a resident of a completely different city, and they keep expecting you to come back, but your work doesn't allow it. Then you have kids, and they need your time, or your spouse needs your time, or you want time. And then it's like the kettle calling the pot black. Then you are in a workshop which is about time management in office. So somewhere, if you look at it, it pieces well together, saying that how could you be doing this to yourself, is how I put it. And I really think that if everyone must pursue their ideas, is the same analogy. The times are changing. I really admire the current generation. Why? Parents, government job, security. Our time, money, the trend of being in a multinational company. Kids today, no job. They don't want to work. They'll work a gig, they'll take a break. They'll do that gig which they like doing, or if they're having to earn money, the break will be for the things that they love. Now that's admirable, and I think that's going to open up a lot for the economy, anyways.
That's
Because look
because
at the
their
amount of things that
that's because their parents busted their guts. Yeah. I mean, just half joking.
broad statement. Look at, huh?
No.
Yeah. I will take that. We are busting our gut.
No, Vikram,
No, but there is something in there.
coming
There's
from the
something in there.
fact that they have had a fairly comfortable stretch and run. The parents were pretty kind of reasonably well off. We didn't have to cross lakes or hop mountains to go to a, and
Yes.
they've absolutely. So with comfort and convenience comes the courage also to take
Yeah.
on, and
Yeah.
it's good.
But
I
but
yes.
one thing is that what we're missing is many of these kids who are working in the gig economy. Please remember that many of them are not our children. They
Yeah.
are people who are still in villages, who
Sure.
still do not have the means, but are today's generation, and hence their outlook is this: that I don't want to be working for someone. I would rather be doing my own thing. Maybe it comes from the economy from the confidence of the economy now.
Yeah, it's to do with there's more affluence, all of that. But I think there is a pattern there, and I'm hearing from a lot of people. Their kids, even small children in school, uh, the subjects that they like, they excel in that. But the ones they don't like, they don't even try, right? So I think in general, kids are much more passion driven. They just want to do what they want to enjoy, and that explains the gig economy to some extent, isn't it? Great. So we're coming towards the end. Maybe a quick one. So if you had to do this whole journey all over again, what would you do differently? Vikram, let me go to you. What would you do differently if you had to do the whole thing again?
I'd for sure start earlier with what I wanted to do. You may not have the right decision on your side, but you'll definitely have the age and the energy on your side to make the mistakes, learn from them, right? Because those lessons stay much longer than what was there in the books. Second is that no plan is perfect. I think we've all heard for a long time, and we spend so much time perfecting the business plan and then dropping it, saying that this doesn't work. You've killed the baby in Excel, so why will it work? But then if you had the idea, uh, it's like a unique fingerprint. Not everybody may have that. There are multiple. Zamano say, you open one medical shop in a country and 15 open up. They're all thriving. Then one delivery partner and multiple open up. One hyper local, or a Uber. So you get the drift, right? So you have a plan. Uh, please pursue it. It is way more adding to your creativity, your financial acumen. Instead of saying I'm a marketing guy, you'll suddenly be CFO, the tax compliance guy, the GST guy. Everything you will be. You learn much more, and and there will be a lot of critics from the closest quarter, and you can't fault them.
I'm reminded of a quote that one of our earlier speakers said. She said, and she was quoting someone else saying, fear has killed more dreams than failure ever will.
I will remember this. I had this one this say, and there are no rules. Don't Somebody will tell you in this industry it will not work like this. I was told I want to become a developer and a constructor of cottages because people like going to the mountain. So that itself, even if I take a 0.0001% of our population, there are many who will be interested. But I was told that till you don't spend your own money in business, no one will come. That means I could have never started because I didn't have the means. So that is not the case. So there are no rules. You must go at it.
Well said. And what would you do the same on the same lines? What would you do the same if you had to do it again?
Um, I think I've trashed my corporate life a lot. I would still want to put in some 15 years or something in corporate life because that gives you. I remember missing a wedding once because of work, and I was called off by this super boss of mine, very lovely chap, and he says, in this line of work with your faculties of education, etc., you should be able to move a mountain or have the contacts of the person who can move, actually physically cut a mountain down. If I give you the task, you should have the faculty of doing that. That is what your capability should be to pull off anything. I wouldn't have got that if I had not gone to work. So that I would definitely do the same.
So Pooja, tell us, I mean, what would you do
What would I
differently
do
if you had to do
differently?
the journey?
I think for starters, I think I would. I mean, I would say I'm blessed that I could make the choices along the journey, along the way. I could literally tread into completely unknown paths. Paths which were not necessarily planned out, or paths which were not necessarily by choice. But it paved its way. What I might do differently is I think I would have a lot more gratitude than compared to what I had in my days as I made the transition. And there was that constant doubt, that never leaves you. Have I made the right choice?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
with that transition, I mean, you've got to be prepared that it's going to be a completely different world. The
Yeah.
two worlds are not going to be similar. You just can't expect the expected. No 2 days will look alike, and that doubt kind of continues to stay with you, and you bother your family members, you bother your people, you bother your spouse, you bother your kids, you bother the people around, the right thing. Have I taken the right decision? Did I do it right by leaving a safe corporate job and a career and transitioning into the unknown? The thing is, you will never be able to find the right answers. Yeah. And the more you wake up to each day in gratitude, and you deeply believe that what I'm doing today and what I'm doing right now is up to me to, where I take it, and how I turn it out to be, will give you the answer. Because nobody had that answer worked out for you, that, oh, what if I had not left my job, and what if I wasn't doing this? A transition is never easy, but staying in a state of doubt can just make that transition even tougher. So today I remind myself each day, that if you just make a list of all the things that worked for you, right, that will far far outweigh all the things that did not work for you. And just seeing, that disproportionate balance itself is a good enough answer for you to know that maybe what you're doing right now, is the right thing to do. So nobody will be able to find that answer for you. You yourself can find that answer, just knowing how to get to that answer, by being grateful a lot more. And I think when I look back, that's something I feel I could have worked and done differently. uh, to your next point,
Yeah, well said.
thank you. Because you realize you can make lives difficult for a lot of people around you, when internally you're agitated, or you're trying to seek answers from outside when they actually lie within. And nobody can ever make you happy. You can never kind of feel you're in the perfect job, you're in the perfect city, you're in the perfect place. And I mean, we've, of course, as a family, have had a lot of transitions.
Sometimes you don't have the answers, but that's okay.
That's
To live with the ambiguity is very important. One can never have all the answers. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what would you do the same? What would you do the same?
exactly what I would do the same, Suman, and I absolutely believe it from the bottom of my heart, is to never fear treading on a path which is unknown. Because had I gone with the safe zones, that, oh, this is my background, this is what I'm trained to do, this is what my education has taught me to do, or my upbringing has led me to, I wouldn't have kind of, seen the adventures that I saw. I wouldn't have gone on to experience the kind of experiences I believe I had, if I just didn't take that plunge. So I think plunging into the unknown is something that I feel I'll continue to do. Right? It, of course, comes with its own set of risks. Yeah, but then you decide those risks for yourself. I mean, you're the best judge of the calculated risk that you can take. But it comes with it, and you can't deny that. And in fact, that's something which I want. My kids observe me do that every day. And if there is only one thing that I want my kids to take away, is that, look, uh, nothing, life will not solve for you. Life will not give you answers, right? You've just got to be ready to face any unknown. And if I mean, if you know, if you see me doing that, you can definitely do that. I don't know what a tomorrow will look on the path of, what we are building currently, right? But if you can live with that ambiguity, you can live with that uncertainty, and still sit down and have a good, peaceful, happy meal at the end of the day, right? I would want my kids to take away that as the most important value. I mean, literally,
Yeah,
it brings
yeah.
you to the present. It just
Hmm.
reminds you, you can't be obsessively thinking about the future, because a lot of times the over obsession with the future can completely ruin the present. And
Yeah, I fully agree. In a way, it's like saying the enjoy the journey, right? It's not always about the destination. You really need to enjoy the
in,
journey.
in, in
In
every
fact, I'm
which
quite
way.
reminded of our podcast itself. This is a journey for us. It's not that we have an end goal in mind.
Mm,
Yeah, it's just
absolutely.
interesting to get to know people's perspectives.
Exactly. It's the people we are meeting at this point of time. It's the people we are interacting. It's what we are building. It's the experiences that we are having. Maybe it was meant to do, maybe it was meant to be, and yeah, I mean, this is not a destination.
I think. Okay, the last question: what advice would you give to somebody who's kind of on the fence and wanting to strike out on their own?
I would absolutely say jump right in, because the more you're thinking, you are killing your own, you're killing your creativity, you're killing your dreams, you're killing your creative neurons by overthinking. So if you're sitting on the fence, jump in, because unless you get there, you'll never know what lies ahead. And trust me, it's never so bad. Yeah, and there is always a U-turn. I mean, life does gives you options to U-turn, but just trying to figure out if I've got it all worked out, if it's a perfect thing to do. Just sitting on the fence can make you feel worse, about yourself. So jump right in, because you just don't know what adventures lie ahead. And of course, I mean, it's going to be a ride. It will be a roller coaster, right? It's not a bed of roses, it's a roller coaster. But yeah, what stops you from riding on that?
Okay, great. Vikram, any advice for somebody who wants to do something on their own?
Imagine yourself at 60 and imagine what you'd be thinking about all the chances and the shots that you could have taken, but you didn't. And it wouldn't matter then whether they had failed or whatever, the sheer satisfaction that it was your thought and there was a tick in front of it would be very satisfying. It would feel a life fully lived and a life of gratitude. There will be more gratitude, like Pooja uh, has now imbibed in me about gratitude. So I think that is something that just visualize yourself at 60 and think that all the things that could have been done, were they done or not. So do not let them go. There are no rules of going about it. I would like to open up to my the things I didn't have, not because I couldn't have had them, but just as situationally. So we're a single family income. I'm the only earning member because my wife took on the responsibility of raising two kids. That's a lot. So there was a single income. You can start. You can think of an idea. It may not be worked all through. Yes, do the regular stuff of ensuring the important stuff, ensuring what direction the math could take. It may not the same, but if it's your vision, if it's a product that has come from your fingerprint, there will be takers, and you will make mistakes. But the point is, right, uh, you can start. This I'm giving from my own example. It doesn't have to be that you throw everything, throw your job, and start something. It can be started. You can take these small steps to doing it while you're at work, so you have the sense of security. So no real large quotes, but these are actual instances that happened, which may help somebody to actually pursue what he wants to do. It may not be his passion. He may not be a music maestro who hasn't, played the instrument professionally and can earn from it. You could be the averager. You want to do something. Start it as a side hustle. Don't leave the job, and but do start. And life, like Pooja says, does give you U-turns. Take the opportunity. Not everything is going to turn up in success, but at least start.
Great.
Wow.
Don't
Some
get ready,
great,
get started.
yeah, some great words of wisdom and advice there from both of you, Vikram and Pooja. I think we'll kind of wrap it up here. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate the kind of effort both of you have made to come up with anecdotes, stories, thoughts, experiences, learnings, and I'm sure people who are going to listen are really going to be happy with what they spend their time doing while listening to this episode. I think the most important thing, and I often say this at the end of an episode, that the sheer vulnerability and openness to share is what I really appreciate from both of you. Thank you so much, and we look forward to sharing this journey of ours with you. I'm sure you will enjoy it too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Atul and Suman, for creating this platform, for for getting people to just be here, open up, to lay their guards down, and to actually speak up. And I think, like Vikram said in the beginning, that creating such platforms where people can actually talk about their transitions, their journeys, their second innings, in itself is something which actually comes back to them, as a greater assurance. I mean, Vikram, don't you think so? Just as you kind of because a person hardly sits down and looks back. In fact, just the other
Yes.
day, Balaji and I were just talking. Isn't we just don't sit down and celebrate in terms of how far we've come. I mean, literally,
Yeah,
like if
Absolutely.
we look at 2 months back in the
yeah,
journey where we were,
that is so
don't
true.
talk about it because we are only thinking about, okay, what's the next big
Yeah.
crisis that's gonna hit? What's the next big thing you're going to get to? So yeah, I think sometimes just sitting down, taking this time off to just kind of run through that. Uh, I think I mean, we should be thanking you, and
Wow.
it's to just think of nothing, sit and reminisce and relearn. When you talk, you relearn a lot of those things.
Pooja, thank you
So
so
this
much.
period that we spent with you, this period we spent with you, sorry, Suman, but this period that we spent with you of words that we may have prepared for, words that came out extempore, were all coming from one place that we went through a transition, we went through a change that came with a lot of challenges and a lot of happy instances, a lot of growth, etc., etc. But you know, in the world of success and money begets money and all that stuff, there aren't people talking about real people and real situations. So this should be this will make you for a very unique spot to come in and listen for such conversation.
We hope so.
Thank you so much, Vikram, and to Pooja for saying that. Personally, it means a lot to me because sometimes I
Mm.
wonder, you know, who are we really adding value because we are just doing this as a passion? But the fact that you think that it's a good thing to, sit down and create that space for people to talk, uh, that keeps us going,
So you're
basically.
also transitioning. You're also transitioning. You're also starting up. So
And
please follow the advice Pooja and I gave about in our advice section.
yeah, yeah. And this helps me to connect with what Pooja was saying earlier about connecting between passion and purpose. What the feedback you both are giving us, are, at least for me, is connecting the passion to the purpose. If it's going to end up helping, if it's helped both of you and you've enjoyed it, and it'll help 2, 4, 8, 10, I don't know how many number of people while listening, that helps me to connect with my purpose, which is to help people, right? So for me it's a passion, like Suman was just saying, a lot of effort and time goes into doing this, and then if it connects into that purpose, that's what will help to sustain it for me over a period of time.